Hello and welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me in another of my wonderful interviews. Now today I'm going to talk to a man who I haven't spoken to on the show here for quite some time, but I do every now and again bump into him at the most unexpected places. And I'm not talking the Houses of Parliament or in the offices of the Met Office where they like to look at chemtrails. They don't call them chemtrails. He is, of course, the man who stood up in Parliament. I think the first time we saw him was something like the 8th or the 13th of December 2023, and was questioning those yellow cards. 500,000 harms had happened to people as a result of a certain medical intervention. And unfortunately, he was just talking to himself because everybody had a pool party or something else far more exciting to go to. But we witnessed it on camera. His name, of course, is Andrew Bridgen. He was an MP. Unfortunately, he no longer is. But maybe that's fortunate. We'll find out. Andrew, it's lovely to have you back on the show.
It's good to be back. Just to put the record straight, Richard, it was the 13th of December 2022 when I stood up.
Oh, is it 2022? How time has flown.
Our time has flown. That's because that was when the Medicines and Healthcare Product Regulatory Agency were asking the government to authorise the experimental jabs for healthy children under 5 down to 6 months. And although the government will deny, and they didn't give me any publicity, and I was cancelled for speaking out, they never did authorise those jabs, and which, I mean, in America, they're giving 3 to children before they're 9 months now.
And that's just, I mean, especially with so much of the evidence that's come out and so many people speaking out, and yet still they seem to have the blindfolds on.
Something like 2.6 million babies have been vaccinated, triple vaccinated with COVID vaccine in the last 12 months, which is, I mean,
frightening.
To be honest, what's going on in America now, I think there's a fight for control of health and human services. We've got Robert Kennedy Jr. in there. We've got the excellent Dr. J. Bhattacharya, original signatory to the Great Barrington Declaration, now head of the National Institute for Health, the position that the despicable Dr. Fauci held for so many years, a completely different sort of man. We've got Asim Malhotra, the cardiologist, out helping Del Bigtree as an advisor to make America healthy again. And I posted an excellent interview with a special advisor to the National Institute for Health and CDC. All the evidence is coming out, but I think he's got a huge job on there because I think the whole of that health department was completely infiltrated by big pharma. I mean, there's a revolving door, as we know, between our regulators in the UK and America and big pharma itself, and there'll be a lot of pushback. But I mean, I'm especially what's happened the last few weeks, I'm increasingly optimistic that they're on the right track in America, and that tsunami of truth and justice will be irresistible as it comes across the Atlantic and wipes away our self-serving politicians and bureaucrats in the UK who've let the public down so badly on COVID, the pandemic response, and so many other issues.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, Trump has come out and said, why is America paying 10 times as much for pharmaceuticals as Europe? Well, the answer is, Richard, and let's not beat around the bush, those senators and those congressmen can't get those millions of pounds of payments unless they're overcharging the American customer, can they?
No, I guess that's true.
Once he's cut the funding, the profits, that then stops the pharmaceutical companies having the money to let's not bribe corrupt elected politicians. The next thing that they'll do, I believe, is then stop big pharma advertising. It's not allowed in the UK. It is allowed in America. And of course, that's how they know that 75% of the funding of the media channels has come from pharmaceuticals. And then
yes.
why they never want to talk about anything negative about big pharma. I mean, so, and let's face it, I mean, Trump doesn't owe any favors to the mainstream news channels in America, does he?
No, not really.
I mean, that's putting it mildly, really. And then in revenge is always a meal best served cold. So he cuts that off as well. They stop the big pharmaceuticals advertising. That cuts their control of the media as well off.
Yes, well, that would
Um,
be very useful.
and then at the same time, you release all the data on the vaccines, which they've got the record level data of doses, dates, and deaths, and not just the COVID vaccines, but also the undoubted link to autism. I think it's 79 jabs an American young person would have before the age of 25.
My God.
79. I think it was eight before 95,
Yes.
or whenever the Americans gave the pharmaceutical industry a blanket immunity from prosecution for all vaccines. I think it was eight, and of course now it's 79. What we do know from the head of the HHS, Robert Kennedy Jr., is that not one of the vaccines given to children in America, and they're the same ones that come over here, have ever been tested to see if they're safe against a placebo.
My goodness. Yes, it's that. I mean, it's a fright. That is a very frightening prospect. It just sounds like you have more vaccines than nappy changes for that poor little baby, which is absurd. But it's good to see you being more optimistic. And I wanted to ask you. I mean, if you translate that back to just before the election, before we had that. Oh, that's a very strange man who's now sort of waking up everybody to the horrors of the Labour Party. You were quite pessimistic back in those days. It's great to see you looking more happier. But you have gone through a hell of a lot. And I wanted to explore maybe some of the things that you've had to endure. Because the first thing is you've been an MP for quite some time.
14
And
over 14 years.
you've exposed two major corruption things with the post office thing and then the vaccine business.
And the modern slavery in the fast fashion industry in Leicester,
Three.
and
I said,
and the great fraud that HS2 was. It was never about
sorry,
building
four. No wonder they didn't want you in government.
a. Well. Also, I mean, what happened in the election in northwest Leicestershire,
Five.
and some very strange anomalies, Richard. So. Um, about a year before the election, I get a message on a Friday that the whole elections department at Northwest Leicestershire District Council, they're the people who maintain the electoral register, and they're the backbone of the compliance for elections. That's the local elections and the general elections. So the county council elections, the district council elections, the parish elections, and the general elections. The whole department, I was told, had resigned on a Friday and all been replaced on the same day by a whole new team who are waiting in the wings.
My God.
I mean, when in local government does the whole of a local government department? And so I was a bit suspicious at this because no one had ever left for 14 years. So I rang up the chief exec, and she was new as well, and she'll be the returning officer. So I rang her up and said, Alison, what on earth's going on? I've heard a rumour the whole election department has resigned en masse. And she said, Andrew, it was the right time for them to move on. And I said, well, the right time for who, Alison? I'm not sure it's the right time for me for them to all move on.
Yes.
So that was very strange. And then the snap election was called, and you know, I don't think it was any sort of election. It was a baton handover from it wasn't a race between the blue and the red team for the finishing line. It was actually a relay race and a baton handover. And I honestly believe that Nigel Farage was basically blackmailed back into politics to ensure that Starmer got a massive majority. I mean, I think they game it out to that level, massive majority with only 32% of the vote.
Yes.
That could
It's such a.
only be engineered by delivering, a very split field. Nigel, I've known him for 10 years. He doesn't look very happy. Um, I personally think he's completely compromised on numerous issues. I will say that when I'd explored everyone in Parliament. And the shocking thing is, going back to 2022, I mean, I knew, Richard, that there was going to be a huge pushback from the establishment going against the narrative and telling what I believe is the truth and will be proved to be the truth about the vaccines and their lack of safety and efficacy. So I wanted to get colleagues to help me. But and I went to all my old colleagues, a lot of the Brexiteers who we fought together, campaigned together. And what shocked me was the number who said that I was right about the vaccine. This is back in November, December 2022. And one of them actually said that he'd actually taken 2 Pfizers and suffered 2 cardiac arrests, but wouldn't
But
speak
it,
out.
but wasn't going to
Too
support you.
scared to speak out, even though another one colleague told me that their sister was paralysed from the neck down, having taken a booster, and I was right. But the sister was a nurse and was now at the mercy of our lovely NHS. And the MP said to me, I said, well, you have to speak out. I'm really sorry to hear about your sister, but you've got to speak out. You've got a duty now. You know for sure you've got to speak out. And she said, well, yeah, but my sister's at the mercy of the NHS, Andrew. She's paralysed from the neck down. And you know what the NHS are like with whistleblowers, don't you? And she said, no, I'm not speaking out. And lots of MPs, their wives came to me and told me, I told him not to take it, and now he's got a heart problem. They knew, and lots of them didn't take it, I think. But to a man and a woman, nobody would speak out. And when I'd explored all of that and been told by the Conservative Party when they suspended me spuriously over the tweet, they told me that there's currently no political appetite for this. Is in January 2023. There's no political appetite, Andrew, for your views on the vaccines. There probably will be in 20 years' time, and you're probably going to get proven right then. But in the meantime, you need to bear in mind you're taking on the most powerful vested interest in the world with all the personal risk for you which that will entail.
Yes. There's
Now,
no good being right if you've been pushed under the bus meanwhile.
but there's also no good being right in 20 years' time when the children are being jabbed now and you
Yes.
stop it. Um, I mean, you have to bear in mind that it was, they covered up even the horrors, the visible horrors of thalidomide. It was 11
Yeah.
years after it was withdrawn before the word thalidomide was allowed to be mentioned in the chamber of the House of Commons and a debate on possible compensation. Well, I mean, you can see how they thought they could get away with 20 years. I'm pretty upbeat because I don't think they're going to get anything like 20 years. They might get, I think it'll be out in the next 6 months. And that's got to be good news because, my goodness, if they could get away with that. When I'd explored everybody in Parliament, I went to see Nigel Farage and I had a meeting with him, explained everything I knew about the vaccines, also about NG163 and how I believed that the vulnerable elderly in hospital at the start of the pandemic were actually euthanized with midazolam and morphine, put down as COVID deaths, and that fear factor was used to ramp up the uptake of the non-effective and dangerous gene therapy so-called vaccines. Nigel, at the end of listening in front of witnesses, turned around to me in January 2023 and said, Andrew, I'm not speaking about the vaccines, and if you know what's good for you, you won't be either. So he knew, and he was not willing to say anything. I also warned him at the time about my belief that the Conservative Party and the Labour Party wanted to take us into a defence union with the European Union, which would cede control of our Army, Navy, Air Force, MI5, MI6, GCHQ, our nuclear deterrent, and our local police forces control to the commissioner, the unelected commissioner Ursula von der Leyen of the President of the European Union. And he said that Brexit was done and he wasn't talking about that either. So the man's clearly not his own master, I would say.
Yes, very, very worrying indeed. And because look, I get emails all the time. At certain times, we've got to vote for reform, vote for reform. Richard, why aren't you promoting it and all of this? And I had a lovely lady on the show who exactly that, who'd been sexually assaulted, as you know, on the show, and she said, ask why Farage is not talking about these subjects. and that caused a bit of a flurry, actually, that show. So I'm very thankful for her for raising that. But as I say, I want to know what happened to you, because I'm assuming, of course, you've got your feet up now. You're out of the system, and thank goodness for that. You don't have to toe the line. You don't have to have these masters telling you what to do, and you don't have to lie to constituents or anything like that. You must be in a very relaxed and happy position, just sort of letting things go, and maybe on a consultancy to help a few MPs how to get questions, awkward questions in front of nobody. Is that the case?
No,
No.
no, I've got about 4 court cases on. I'm still in lawfare. Um, so at the election, that new department, elections department, I was a bit suspicious. So I thought I'd go and see them just before the election when it
Right.
had been called. And I'd already done I'd already agreed with my council that the council buildings weren't a classic. They were very inefficient, 1980s. Um, that they'd move all the customer-facing services into empty shops in the Beaver Centre, so get the footfall up in the shopping centre, and move the backroom services into offices the council already owned on an industrial estate. And we'd pull down the old buildings, the old offices, leave the listed building at the front for the registry office, and put some nightlife in there, sort of a bowling alley and some cafes and restaurants and things, and that would be a better use of the site. What I was shocked as to find out that they had actually moved out of those offices, but the only department they left in there was the new elections department, the new team, unmanaged on their own in this great big empty office block for 6 months before the general election.
Gosh.
That was very strange. And then when we got to the count, the new returning officer, and bear in mind, that's my 5th general election, 2 referendums, and I don't know, probably 20 local elections. I've been to a few election counts, but never been to one quite like this, because the returning officer stood up at the beginning at 10 o'clock, and we just got there as soon as the polls had closed. And she in a quavering voice, which seemed very, very nervous, she said that this time there could be a great delay in getting the ballot boxes in, and we might not get onto the count till 2 in the morning. That's 4 hours after the ballots close. Interestingly, my constituency had actually got a little bit smaller because I've got too many houses, too many people. So we'd had to lose 2 wards. So whereas the previous 4 elections, we always managed to get the ballot boxes all in about 25 minutes, half an hour.
Right.
This time it was going to take up to 4 hours, and the seat had got smaller.
Are they going on a sort of seaside excursion around the
Well, we could have
country
brought them
then?
in from Scotland by that time, you see.
Yeah.
Um, and I've never seen an elections team as nervous. When I pulled up at the count at the uh, at the count, about a third of the car park was coned off with security guards. And I said, "What's all this about?" And they said, "Oh, we don't want anyone near where we're bringing the ballot boxes in." That's never happened
Yeah.
before.
Because obviously they didn't want them tampered with in any
No,
shape or
or
form.
anybody speaking to the people who are bringing or taking
Yes.
photographs of them, or and when the ballot boxes were opened, well, they were already opened. I never saw any of them opened. They appeared to be opened. And we looked at my votes, about 3%. So my vote had gone down from 63% in 2019 to 3%. And yet, when I was out on the doorsteps, it was brilliant. Just the same as I know what winning feels like. I've done it plenty of times, always increased
Yeah.
the vote. Um,
Sounds like you should have
and
taken a
then,
trip back to the ballot places just
yes,
to
and
see if
then
there was confetti all over the place where
I
certain.
have my suspicions. And then of course, it was then further compounded my suspicions when a couple of days after the election, I got a phone call from someone a constituent I'd been speaking to since the madness started about 5 years ago, probably only a couple of times a year. And he said to me, "I'm very disappointed. Obviously, my wife and I voted for you, Andrew, as always, and I'm very disappointed. But I need to tell you something." He said, I actually work for Ipsos Mori, the exit poll people.
Oh,
Hmm. He said, and I was tasked with doing the exit poll in your constituency. He said, and we scouted it out and I recruited all the people. And he said, we were all sorted where we were going to go, which is actually was the polling station I voted at myself, Huddlescote Community Centre. It's a double two polling areas. So there's a lot of voters. We got people, recruited to stand there with cover from 7 in the morning till 10 at night. He said they ask every fourth person who comes out. They have to count the people, and they have to ask every fourth person how they voted. And they write it all down and then fire that off to London. That's your exit poll. And he said he knew that Ipsos Mori nationally was struggling to get enough people for the night. They were struggling. He said, but we're in North West, we're all sorted. And then 2 weeks before the election, his boss rang him up and said, stand down, we do not want to poll North West Leicestershire. Why would you not want to poll? Well, I put it to you, Richard, because if they polled it, that would have been rather different to the result that.
to the result, yeah, of course.
So I don't know anywhere else in the country that they'd planned to poll. And I got a journalist who rang up Ipsos Mori because she knows them and was in sort of email ping pong with them, asking them questions in general about the exit poll. But as soon as she put the question in, and why can you tell me why you pulled out of North West Leicestershire 2 weeks before the election, she never got any more emails back after that. So.
And I mean, what makes it even crazier is that you were a controversial figure, and so people would want to see that yours was most fairly done of all of them.
Well, I never got any publicity from the BBC or the mainstream media in the run-up. They did. They did. The BBC did ring me and said you're allowed a 15-second broadcast to on BBC Radio Leicester, which is not a big station.
Right.
I said, well, 15 seconds, well, that's generous. That's just over a fraction over a second for every year I've been an MP. And
There now
I
follows a
recorded,
party
I
political
recorded, I
broadcast on behalf
recorded
of the
my,
Thanks for
I
Listening.
recorded my 15 seconds, which said, my name's Andrew Bridgen. I've been your MP for the last 14 years. I was right about HS2. I was right about the post office scandal, and I'm now being proved right. I was right about the modern slavery in Leicester, and now I'm being proved right about the COVID-19 vaccines. And that last sentence meant they never ever played it.
They never played it. Gosh, 15 seconds. That was
15
just too
seconds,
long,
and
isn't
I
it?
didn't get it. We didn't get it. And the excuse was when I said, well, why didn't you ever play that clip? She said, well, one of the 7 candidates on the list didn't send it in, so we didn't think it was fair to give you an unfair advantage when all the other
Yes.
yeah. So I mean,
Yeah.
it
Well, I
was
mean, I can see that.
and it was interesting. A few months ago, I at a filling station in Colville in northwest Leicestershire, I met a retired, very senior police officer who I worked with in the early years of my being an MP, and he'd long retired. And he came over to me, and we got chatting, and I said I was very upset, and I believe there'd been, electoral fraud in northwest Leicestershire. And he just looked me in the eye, and he said, given your situation, Andrew, and what you've said in Parliament and how you've rubbed them up, he said, what did you really expect them to do to you? And that's what that was, a very senior police officer who's been retired for, you know, a
Yes.
decade or so. And
And
that
and
was his
and
open view. He knew what was going on.
yeah,
No surprise
yeah.
at all. So we've had all that, and 2 weeks before the general election, I did an interview with an excellent group of people called Resistance GB.
Oh yes, I
Um,
know them.
yeah,
Wilf,
Will,
Will,
Will Coldfield,
Will. Well, I called him Wilf, but anyway,
Will,
Will.
and his team, and I exposed the fact that in late 2023, I tried to expose to the government that there was considerable numbers of children being trafficked from Ukraine to the UK. Um, and we'd got 2 independent whistleblowers who were, at that time, former Ukrainian secret services, and that the Ukrainian secret services were collecting the children up, mainly from the Donbass area, eastern, so mainly the Russian ethnicity children, and were shipping them out to the UK for the paedophiles. Where they were coming in, the names of all the people involved in it, the company that was laundering the money, everything. And my contact had taken it to Gloucestershire Police, MI5, National Crime Agency, back to MI5, back to the National Crime Agency, and they'd got all the recordings of all these phone calls where they'd tried to pass this information over. And I was pretty angry about this, and I gave that information to the government, and all I got back was over a month later was, if you believe a crime has been committed, report it to the police. When I'd already pointed out that it had been through all of those things and nobody.
Yes.
And I'm afraid, Richard, I said, you can't ask the state to investigate itself on something like this matter. Yeah. 4 weeks after that, I was picked up by Leicestershire Police. So that's 2 weeks after the general election, and then accused of paedophilia myself. I was accused of abusing a young boy 25 years ago as a part of a satanic ritual abuse at a Freemasons meeting, which is interesting. And why they picked me up to interview me under caution on all this, because they could easily have established, which they did, that I'd never been a member of the Freemasons. But this was just, they can do this, and it cost me a fortune.
Yes.
It cost me a day for a lawyer.
Yeah.
They did offer me their own lawyer, of course, Richard, which,
Well, of course, I'm
we don't
sure
want to end
you
up
know,
like Peter Lynch, do we? I mean, and they're just showing you what they can do. I mean, it's absolutely ludicrous.
Yes.
So they haven't left me alone. The Hancock case is very time consuming.
How is Mr. Hancock?
Well, if he's not serving penance for his sins, he's doing rather too well, in my estimation. What Mr. Hancock isn't short of is money, and so he's constantly delaying with extra hearings, appeals. They appeal everything to the nth degree, because when they lose, they've got a bottomless pit of money, and it depletes my resources all the time. So although Hancock has now lost 2 strikeout applications, he's now appealing again, which will be more delay and more time. But I'm hoping that in the next few days, the judge will decide that he can't appeal. But that still doesn't stop him being able to go to the Court of Appeal. And on that point, myself and my barrister have been working on some very interesting letters which we've sent to the head of the judiciary. And Richard will be publicising this pretty soon. We've got very, very firm proof of corruption between High Court judges and Court of Appeal judges, to the extent where it appears we have compelling evidence that appeal court judges have let High Court judges whose cases are being appealed write the appeal response for the appeal court judge.
These days, nothing surprises me.
It's absolutely appalling.
Yes.
And quite honestly, if we had an unbiased and fair judiciary, a lot of the other problems we have in our society would be sorted, because they wouldn't dare do it.
Yes.
It is what I believe is the corruption of the judiciary. And if we do find corrupt judges, there is nothing that needs punishment more than a corrupt judge, because that is the ultimate betrayal. And it allows, I say, once they know that it can happen, a lot of other things go on, because they know there are no consequences for these issues. I think not being an MP has given me the time to do an awful lot of research, because the Parliament do keep you very, very busy, and not time to think, and they spoon feed everything to you, to the members, so that they always want you to go with it, make it easy to go with the narrative. So I think I've widened my knowledge and had time to meet an awful lot of people and speak to a lot of people. The crimes that are being committed against all of us, and it's a global problem. But we are going to have to prosecute some very senior politicians, civil servants, scientists, medical experts, as a lesson. to those who seek high office that if you betray the people, commit treason, well, it's actually it's high treason because it's people who are taking money from the public purse betraying them, there are going to be huge consequences. And I am hoping that that chink in the dam, the crack in the dam, is going to come from America, and you know the same things are being prosecuted against the people over here, whether it's the vaccines, the ludicrous lockdown rules and mandates and masking, or the geoengineering, which it's interesting.
Mm.
That was the last written question I got back before Rishi Sunak called that general election. I'd asked, I put a written question in. Is the government carrying out any geoengineering, cloud seeding, or weather manipulation that would affect UK airspace? And the follow-up question was, or is it aware of anybody else doing it? And the answer came back with the second part crossed off, and the answer was no. So the government said they weren't doing it. This is in May 2024, but they refused to answer, are they aware of anybody else doing it?
Anybody else doing it?
Yeah.
And
And,
and here,
and then 2 days later, before I could bang that second question back in, called a snap general election.
yes,
But I mean, I
and
think,
now
and my view on that is, and I'll be dead straight with your. I've known for some time about the geoengineering because we have East Midlands Airport in northwest Leicestershire, and I've actually got to a couple of whistleblowers who work at the airport, and they'd left a company at the airport because they thought it was morally wrong what's been going on, and it's almost certain that the aerial spraying's been going on since at least 2019. Um, it's bad. It's bad. But I mean, when they try and persuade you that the sky looks normal and it does like when we were children, I
yes.
mean, when the party asks you to disregard the evidence of your own eyes and ears,
Well, it's.
and
I
some
mean,
people
what's
do,
what?
don't they? I mean, some people do.
Yeah, I know. And then they'll say, "Oh, well, that's the Mandela effect, isn't it?" It's you just imagine that you had clear skies, and they're so busy painting them in the sort of Mary Poppins videos so that we could know that. But what is amazing that since I think it was the BBC who made some announcement to say that now the UK government are going to sort of try and dim the skies a bit and reflect sunlight back, that in that time, all that over the last winter, and had been talking about it on the show almost incessantly about the cloudy days and the crisscrosses in the sky, etc., etc. Suddenly, that the BBC make this announcement: "Oh, we're going to do this." Of course, we've had to have some sunshine to remind people what it's like having sunshine,
Well,
because
take it
we're all
away.
bloody. And then they say, "Oh, it's too much, isn't it? Because the food's just not enough water. It's too bad, and you're all burning. Everyone's getting cancer, turbo cancer. Suddenly, wonder where they're getting that from." And we'll have to take it away, as you
Oh,
say.
it's it. They were getting it from the sun creams, weren't they?
Yes, that's
Worst
it.
thing you
Yeah.
could possibly do. The sun's the best thing for you. All the evidence is you're far better and healthier being out and being exposed to sunlight than not. Mysteriously, exactly the opposite of what the science has been telling us for so many years. When mothers have been smothering their young children,
Yes.
offspring, in sun cream, factor whatever.
Yes, but
Very, very
Andrew,
bad
we
for
have to we have to trust the science, don't we?
you.
I
No,
mean, trust the science with
no.
global warming, trust the science with vaccinations. Surely, that's such
Well, all you can trust the science with is that 97% of scientists will find the results that the people who are paying them want. That's what that's.
that's the ones to trust. Yes, trust the bank managers who will
You've
know
got to
that more
follow
than
them,
most.
follow the money. So
Follow the money. Yeah.
no, no, but we are living in absolutely amazing times, and I
Yes.
think the truth's coming out. The reason I think that the government, um, the red wing of the uni party, which is in at the moment, had to come out with this statement about we're going to do some experiments with geoengineering. Is there's too many people know, and I
Yeah.
think the people who are actually doing it are getting a bit windy. I mean, let's just look at it. Regard to the genocide that the vaccine rollout was and is, they can always have some defense. We made a mistake, and they will say this is what they're going to say, that we made a mistake. We worked in, the best information we had at the time.
Yeah, speed
So,
of science.
3 years ago, Andrew Bridgen didn't say anything, did he? No, we didn't hear any of his speeches. We happened
No,
to be out at the
at the pool
barbecue,
party.
anywhere, not listening to his speeches, and no one ever sent them to us, so we didn't know.
Yeah,
Um, they
totally
have
agree.
got some mitigation, but I mean, when you catch somebody spraying chemicals on us from the sky,
Mm,
now where's your defence? It
exactly.
doesn't
Yeah.
spring to mind, does it?
No.
And we've always denied we're doing it, but we are doing it. So I think they've certainly they've got a bit windy, but I mean, anyone, if you follow the science, I mean, if you're geoengineering cloud sun dimming over the UK, I mean, what are we? A fraction of 1% of the globe.
Exactly.
So on global temperatures by cloud seeding, and bear in mind, it's a crime to cloud seed over somebody else's country without their
Well,
permission.
well, of course it must be.
Be an act of so they can do it to their
Act of-
own people. So we block the sun out over the UK. It would have no effect on the world's temperature, but it have quite a devastating effect on the UK food production and the health and well-being of our plants, animals, and humans. Let's bear in that.
Yes.
So we could devastate our own country for nothing. But we're doing that with net zero anyway, aren't we? I mean,
Well, it's all going towards the same bloody end.
well,
And then you've got the hypocrisy.
you have to remember that 500 billion of the elite's money went to China for investment in their businesses before COVID. 500 billion dollars of investment went during the lockdowns. And through implementing net zero across the developed world, all we're doing is driving all the business to where the investment by the elites was 5 years ago. They're guaranteeing that the only place goods can be manufactured are China. Currently, if you're a manufacturing business in the UK, your electricity is 5 times more expensive than China, 4.5 times more expensive than India. You're not going to be very competitive, are you?
Well, you're not going to compete if your electricity doesn't come because you've covered the countryside in
And
swathes of
have you
solar
have
panels.
you have you heard the latest on the solar panels today?
Well, I did hear that there's some Chinese technology in them so that they can be switched off remotely.
Absolutely. Most of them come from China. Then the reason all this green technology, the turbines, the turbine blades, and the solar panels are so cheap from China is they're being manufactured using energy from coal-fired power stations. I mean, they're opening new ones every week,
Yes,
two new coal-fired power stations a week to keep up with the demand. They must be laughing.
they must be
And then
laughing.
the Chinese have put chips in them. And you remember all the debate about Huawei and whether we
Oh,
can have
yes.
them in this technology and that technology. And it looks like, well, it's all true. I've also know that Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London's had legal papers served on him on Wednesday this week with regarding to Chinese products uh, in the
In the 5G?
no in the cameras
Streetlights?
in the cameras
In the cameras. Oh, in the ULEZ
US
cameras.
cameras, and certainly a product in there which is considered of concern, which if it's above a certain height off the ground, there has to be a warning sign, which there are no warning signs on and apparently MI6 have just issued that there's a Chinese chip in our traffic management system in London as well. So I think all of these Chinese components are putting our whole country tremendously at risk. And of course, we've had former prime ministers who've been cozying up and lobbying
Mm.
for the Chinese Communist Party, and also other threats. WHO basically funded by the Chinese Communist Party and Bill Gates, an unholy alliance, who placed the current director general in there. Um, and it's highly likely that a lot of the world's going to be signing up to come under their jackboot in the event of another pandemic. And of course, the unfortunately, it looks like Starmer's going to sign away without taking us back into the EU, but sign away our sovereignty with regard to our defence and security at a meeting with the EU on Monday.
I mean, they've got all this going on, but of course, the fact that we're talking about it, and I'm just hoping that, of course, the last one of the times I had you on, of course, I was banned and struck off and
So
all of
you
this.
should be.
So absolutely, that's so evil.
What a
Um,
conspiracy. I mean,
just
everyone knows that the vaccines are safe and effective now, don't they? And that was
yes,
years
of course.
ago.
Say that a few times because that keeps the
Totally, yes, absolutely.
it keeps the video
You say a lie
online.
often enough, it might become the truth, but I don't think so, to be honest.
No, no, I certainly don't. But it must. Well, my point was going to be that it must be more difficult now for them because it does seem as if everything now is running through a sieve with ever a bigger holes, so that the lies that they do. I mean, they seem so desperate to get these things out there that unless you really are brain dead, and perhaps the vaccine has sort of helped people to see. I mean, there's a lot of COVID drivers at the moment. I don't know if you've driven much on the roads, but there does seem to be a lot of people just ignoring it. But it may be the traffic signalling that Chinese, zapping people in some way. But it must be hard because we do have the technology they have given us has the reverse effect that we are using it back on them and talking like merry hell about the various bits and pieces that are going on and sharing that knowledge. Are you seeing in where you go around a greater awakening and a greater resistance to the nonsense?
I am, but I am concerned. There is thought that they're planning another pandemic.
Do you think people will go along with that?
Well, I think if they have another pandemic, I'll make my predictions. It will be claimed that it's targeting children. I
Right.
mean, they can't say you've got to do all these measures and take these experimental drugs to save Granny because I mean they killed Granny with midazolam
Kill
a
Granny off.
long time ago, so she's gone.
Yes.
So it will be the children will be the next thing. So that they will say that this is and I think they will not even start with it's a virus. They'll say it's a bioweapon that's been released from a lab. Yeah,
Because it's got to be something,
well, it'll be something.
the theatricality has got to
Yeah,
be
yeah,
bigger,
and
hasn't it?
then that's and that probably will be the last throw of the dice. And whether they get away with all this and force us into another round of subjugation, I think they know they're losing it with the public. The awareness is rising and to dangerous levels for them, and that makes them rather more keen to have a crackdown. Whether that is a war with Russia that will then allow them to bring in martial law and take away more freedoms, and or another pandemic, or giving the powers to the WHO, in which, of course, then the weak, lily-livered politicians we've got in this country will just turn around and say, "Well, we signed a treaty, and they've declared this
Yeah, there's
pandemic.
nothing we can
They've
do.
said you've got to, but it's
Oh,
not us. It's not us that's doing to it. It's the WHO. Yeah, but you gave away the powers, and
yes,
you gave away the.
yeah.
So
How would martial law work? I mean, we have a very depleted police force who are very
well, I
keen
think you
on.
might find what the uninvited guests, the invaders, are here for when.
Do you mean the people coming in on those deliciously lovely rubber boats?
Yes, the same boats recycled round and round again with the same engines. Yes, what they
Yes,
send
those
back.
boats.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's quicker than
that was so funny. I mean,
quicker than the Brittany ferry.
I know a former police officer who's a decent guy, and he's now a probation officer, and he had a guy from Syria or Libya who'd assaulted someone in London, but this guy had admitted during his probation, having his chats, that he'd actually bought 43 dinghies of asylum seekers across the channel. He told them where he came from, uh, and he doesn't come across like the short bit. He comes across the long bit and he said, and he dropped them off, then took the boat back to France empty. And he said they never stopped him. And he did 43. He'd done 43 runs. This chap he had for
It's a
the
taxi service.
Albanian mafia, who used to be into drugs. And they said that they'd gone into people smuggling because it was a lot less risky and a lot better paid,
Yes.
a lot less chance of ever being convicted. And he only ended up assaulting someone when he got drunk, and that's why he was on this. So he wasn't having probation for coming across the channel 43 times, and I think it was like 40 odd people in the dinghy each time. So it was
Gosh.
a lot of
Yeah.
Um, and this probation officer, former police officer, said to me, he said, Andrew, you get a dinghy, fill it full of alcohol and cigarettes, bring it across the channel, land on a beach. He said, you won't get 3 trips and you're going to be arrested. He said,
Yeah.
how can you get away with 43 times coming across the channel with illegal migrants? Well, yeah, well, it's coming, isn't it?
It's coming. As we come towards the end of the show, I mean, obviously, all of this has taken its toll on you because when you left or were booted out as an MP and you struggled, presumably you haven't got a high powered job with, I don't know, Pfizer or any of the big pharmaceuticals or
No,
even
and
mainstream media.
unfortunately, I didn't, and I didn't take any money from Big Pharma. In fact, I was their nemesis. But I had found out, and it was very interesting, which I didn't know while there was an MP for 14 years. But if Pfizer, Moderna, or any other company wish to make a donation to an MP to help with their work, a bit like they do in America to the senators and congressmen and women,
Hmm.
it's tax free while you're an MP.
Gosh.
So anyone can give you an amount of money, millions of pounds, any number of millions of pounds to help with your work, which you can spend on whatever you want, apparently.
Yeah, oh, right. Yeah.
And I mean, this sounds like a bribery charter, doesn't it?
Doesn't it just?
Doesn't it just? I mean, no other profession where you could get gifted million. I mean, if you wanted to avoid inheritance tax, I mean, you'd have to get your parents to give you, you know, the properties and say it's to help with your work.
Yes,
No tax
absolutely.
to
Yeah.
pay. I mean, it's just well, that's the position. I think it's absolutely it's rife. So when you find out that Starmer was having clothes bought to him by a very good friend, Lord Ali, and various gifts and things, then all tax free. All
It's all tax free. But to you, then, I mean, there you are out there in the wilderness now, no longer having the echelons of Parliament all around you and
well,
all those.
I was a multi self-made millionaire before I became an MP for North West Leicestershire. I was former Young Executive of the UK when I was young in 2000. I was chairman of the Institute of Directors for the East Midlands. Um, Through lawfare over the years, I've been separated from all my business assets, even my pension, my private pension, which I had before I was an MP, all the pension fund, I'm separated from that. I'm the only MP, mysteriously, Richard, who ever had to sell his house to HS2. And they gave me £500,000 less than it owed me and £360,000 less than I'd paid for it and bought it for 5 years before.
Gosh.
That is what HS2 is. And a whistleblower in HS2 told me afterwards that they hated me that much that the government would have put a loop around my house if they could. That's what I mean, these aren't coincidence. They
No, they,
coincidences, Richard. Do you know what I mean? And I voted and spoke against HS2 from the moment it was conceptualized and said this is going to be a disaster. It's going to go out of control on spending, and it'll get cancelled. Um,
and yes, so you were right again. Um, so how are you faring? I mean,
but it's tough.
you've got.
It is very tough.
I mean, obviously, your personal issues you don't like to talk about, and I can understand that. You're an MP or have been an MP, and you have that image. But now that you are, one of us, as it were, back to
I
being
think I was
an
always
ordinary.
one of us. That's the problem.
That is, yes, I
Too
think
many of
that's true.
too many MPs are one of them, unfortunately.
Absolutely. But now that you're one of the everyday, let's say. I mean, and the way can people and you've been non-stop. I mean, you have been non-stop. I've bumped into you at various talks and things, and you barely have time to say hello. Either
I'm
that or you
speaking in
just.
Taunton tomorrow night, by the way.
Oh, brilliant! There you go. Here
Um,
in Taunton.
Yeah, the house I rent in Colville, unfortunately, my landlady's sold it. I've got to get out of there. I've got to downsize again to even smaller, uh, smaller premises, and I've just got to get rid of a whole load of furniture unless I can find somewhere to store it, and it's an absolute nightmare. It's
Right.
just moving
But
house, being forced to move house is that
Have you got?
is it an
Is it
invention?
Chippendales and what are those Chesterfield chairs? I can imagine you with all that sort of stuff.
They were male strippers, weren't they? The Chippendales.
Oh yes, I think
I
they
think
were actually.
they were.
The thing is, I mean, what I on this show, I've had people in funny situations, and the viewers are amazing. The viewers, they come forward and they help people. So if you have, I mean, this is off the cuff, but if you have somewhere where if somebody out there say had some storage facilities and they were anywhere near you in North Leicestershire, or anywhere, I suppose. I mean, I know a lady up in Scotland who's got a gorge, but it might be a bit far. They could. Would you be open to somebody coming to assist you?
It would be super if anyone could offer any help in any way.
Because I know what that's like. I mean, I've got a load of junk in my house which I need to get rid of, but that's just really a trip to the tip, which I just put off. But it is a difficult thing. And so you were downsize still in the same area, or are you looking to spread your wings a little bit?
I want to stay in northwest Leicestershire. Yeah, and they're my people. That's where I was brought up. And every time I go out of the house, people tell me, even nearly a year later, they voted for me just like they always did. Apparently, I only got 3% of the vote, but I nearly rang the police up the other week and said, I think I must be being stalked, because wherever I go in northwest Leicestershire, that 3%, they're always different people, but they're always there. They're surrounding me all the time.
Absolutely.
Something's going on.
It's a swelling 3%.
I don't know, yes, 3%.
It is strange. So, I mean, the thing about this is that you haven't turned your back, you haven't walked away, even though, as you say, you're downsizing, you're trying to find somewhere to put your furniture. You're still prepared to stand up for the things you believe in.
When the Conservative Party, they tried to bribe me in, it was January 22 when they offered me anything I wanted in the world to betray the trust placed in me and shut up about the COVID vaccines and the lockdowns and everything. And I wouldn't accept that. They threatened me in 23, the most powerful vested interest in the world. Well, I think we're going to beat the most powerful vested interest in the world, and that's going to be tremendously satisfying. And I think that's the turning point, because that's going to be a win, not for me, but that's going to be a win for the people. And then we can actually create a much better society and a fairer society than we had before. And I want to be part of that, Richard, the future.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of people that would like to see you part of that because of your stance. You've encouraged so many people to keep going and not give up and all of that, which, I can say thank you on behalf of all those people, I'm sure. But as you say, you get people coming up to you in the street and at events, and they just mob you.
Will Coleshill at Resistance GB said to me, Andrew, you've done something unheard of in politics. You're now an ex-MP that it doesn't matter what street you walk down, in what town in the country, people come up to you and shake your hand. He said, all the previous prime ministers have to have bodyguards, don't they?
Yes, or babies to kiss. To get popularity.
I would keep most of them away from any children at all, to be honest.
Absolutely, yes, indeed. Well, it's been a joy to catch up with you, and I'm sure we will. Our paths will cross again. It is. I mean, it's an amazing time. Although it's been hard, I know for you and for many, many people, and a lot of people who have been harmed by the awful jab that's been given out. But it is an amazing time to see the turnaround that I believe, like yourself, that we are going to see. And if only it would be a bit quicker, but it's going to be an amazing thing to tell our grandchildren and them to say, we lived through this time. So, so very much looking forward to seeing that. In the meantime, of course, if I'm being cheeky here, if any of my viewers have got a little bit of spare space, and how much space are they going to need? A garage or a warehouse? What are we talking?
I need a garage, really.
You need a garage.
That size. About 20 foot by 10.
Oh, he's measured it already. There you go. If anyone's got that, do come forward. It'd be nice to sort of help your ex-MP who stood up for COVID and the harms of it. It would be good. You'll be doing a grand thing. You're at, where else are you at in the next month or so? Can people come and see you?
I'm speaking at Taunton Racecourse tomorrow night, so it's probably depending when this goes out. Um, what we are doing, I'm with a team, and we are. You'll probably know some of the characters. We are looking at forming a new political party, which will not be in the uni party model, and that will be quite interesting.
Yeah.
And we'll have maybe three years to sort out. But I'll also make another prediction that Nigel Farage will implode. That will all implode within the next 12 months.
Yes.
And I
I
might
think.
and I might be holding the pin.
Well, there we go. There's a movie in all of this. You do know that, don't you? There is a big movie to be made.
History is apparently written by the victors, so we'd better make sure we win, hadn't we?
Yes. Then.
We want to choose who's going to be playing us, don't we, Richard?
Well, that's true. I'm not sure anyone will want to play mine part, but I'm sure there'll be some dashing, heroic, bodybuilding, wonderful man to play your role.
Thank you. Let's get it sorted then, quickly.
Absolutely. Andrew, thank you so much for coming on the show. Look after yourself. A big thank you.
Thanks.
And
Thanks for everything you do as well, Richard, and God bless.
God bless you. There you are, ladies and gentlemen, the wonderful Andrew Bridgen. Do go and support him whenever you see him. Tell him you're one of the 3%. That'll just sort of, make him think that, hang on, something really weird was going on, even if you're in Scotland. Until next time, I shall have more monologues and more wonderful guests. But from Andrew and I, take care, look after yourselves. Bye for now.